selling phonograph cabinets. You see, customers noticed the wagons he carried his tools around in and started asking to buy them as well. And after enough people requested the wagons, he shifted his focus to them. He formed the Liberty Coaster Company in 1923 and began making metal wagons out of stamped steel in 1927. Now, it was in 1930 that the company was renamed Radio and Steel Manufacturing, and soon afterwards began making the Radio Flyer wagon. Now, besides being made of steel and wood, Little Red wagons may also be made of plastic or other materials. Wheels can be made of hard plastic or rubber, or can be air tires. I'm Andrew Caravella, and this has been The More You Know.
Here at the Del Walmsley Radio Show, where the hype ends and the help begins, tune in Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. I'll show you how you can retire in 5 years or less, right here on KCAA, 1050 a.m., 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. By the way, you can follow the show on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I am on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And this portion of the show is brought to you by Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, the name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you're looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Ernie Gonzalez at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-284-8332, or online at mortgagesbyernie.com. Tell him Father John sent you. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, an equal housing lender. In the news tonight, we got a couple of things, something very exciting. Our world-famous board operator, Nick, and his wife, Laurel, are having their wedding anniversary. How's it going in there, Nick? Are you beat by the wife?
Not yet.
The night's young. If it's physical, it's therapy.
Ask me. Well, that's what the weekend is for. So
yes.
We couldn't. I was working last night, and I'm obviously working tonight. But over the weekend, we're going to do a quick little getaway out in Anaheim. We're going to go to Knott's Berry Farm, and we actually got married at Knott's Berry Farm. So
yeah, you have that Snoopy look about you.
I do. I also very much have the Charlie Brown look too.
I have to tell you, Nick is a great guy, and as a priest, part of my job is to do confession, and I appreciate Nick because he usually brings pictures. Although I think he needs a new chiropractor after some of those pictures I've seen.
Oh boy!
So anyhow, congratulations to you and Lauren.
Thank you very much.
Also in the news, I want to put a shout out to the Police Department of Claremont here in California. I'll tell you what, it is a tough job being a police officer. And today, while I was out doing errands for the show, I had seen a situation develop. And the Claremont Police Department had every right in the world to shoot. The person put these officers in serious danger. He tried to run them over with his car. But the police officer thought about the backstop. In other words, where his bullets would go. And there was people driving up Indian Hill Boulevard that could have caught a stray. And so he did the right thing. He got in his car and pursued instead. And while the guy caused a traffic accident, they did catch him and he did go to jail. I just want to give a shout out to Claremont PD for being so professional. And I want you to know that this resident of Claremont really appreciates what you do. And you can expect that. I'll be calling the watch commander and letting them know. I really think you guys did an outstanding job today. So good on you. On December 6th, of this year at 6 p.m., I will be celebrating the candlelight service at Mountain View Mortuary and Cemetery in San Bernardino. Come on down and celebrate the life of someone you love. What they do is they have a DVD play. If you take a photo of your loved one who's passed, they usually like people who have passed within the last year or two, and they'll include in the video show while we're holding the candlelight service, and the photo of your loved one will go up on the screen so we can appreciate them. We'll light candles for them, and we'll share in this time, which is difficult during the holidays of grief, and we'll have some refreshments. So it'll be before the show next week, or excuse me, on December 6th. It is a Thursday night. So come on down, and I'd be happy to see you at the place. Come up and say hello to me. And then, of course, afterwards, tune into this show at 8 o'clock that night. I'm very grateful to have our guest this evening. He's someone I've really come to appreciate greatly. It's Dr. John Smith, the author of the book, The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose, which is a book I have read, and I like it very much. We were talking at dinner that I think you and I think a great deal alike, which either says a great thing about me or doesn't say something good about you. I'm not sure which yet. But, Doctor, say hello to the people.
Well, thank you for having me back. This is my encore appearance. I was on a few weeks ago, and so I thought you and I connected really well and enjoyed our conversation. So I really appreciate you having me back and continuing where we left off.
Well, I'll tell you, and I mean this with all sincerity, I'm very choosy about who I have come back as a second-time guest, and Nick could tell you that. There's less than a handful of people I've done that with. That's how much I enjoyed having you on the show, and as much as I enjoyed that, I enjoyed your book even more. I think you made some really prophetic statements in there that I think any man would benefit from. Yes. And so I'm really recommending, and I feel like a dummy tonight because I got here to the radio station and realized that sitting on my coffee table is your book, so I can't even put it up on YouTube. But if you want to see what it looks like, go to Amazon.com, and while you're looking at the book, purchase it.
That would be wonderful.
Would that work for you?
That would work for me, yes.
So again, the name of the book is The Authentic Man, A Guide for Happiness and Purpose. And when I contacted you to come back on, there was a section of the book I really wanted to talk with you about because I really think you nailed it perfect. And that's the 10 different kinds of men and how they're described. Now, I will admit, in 9 out of the 10, I found parts of me in each one.
Yes.
There's a 10th one that not so much, but the other 9 I could really relate to and say, okay, I see some of me here and some of me there. Let's talk about some of those personalities.
All right. So in the book, I identify 10 different types of men that I've come to know in my professional experience and personal experience. And to be very truthful, I am also a combination of several of those types, or have been at various points in my life. So I think most men can relate, and most women who are with men can relate. In fact, an interesting little story, I was talking to a woman who actually had read my book, right. And she laughed and she said, yes, she goes, I think I've dated all 10 of those men, all 10 types. And I laughed and she laughed, but what really stuck to me was the fact that she had dated those men, but she didn't stick with any of them. And I thought, well, why would that be? And I realized, well, because they all lacked something that she really wanted and needed, and that was emotional connection, emotional intimacy, emotional closeness, and it's what I call in the book emotional wholeness.
Right.
Right. So the 10 different types of men, we can, if you'd like, I can kind of run down some of those types and
yes.
a little bit about what they are. I start off with the weak man.
Right.
Now, most people would think the weak man, that's the guy, getting sand kicked in his face at the beach, right? Well, in fact, it kind of is that way, but not literally. So the weak man basically is someone who gives his power away to others, and probably
right.
grows up in a home where either the mother is extremely dominant or whether it's a very oppressive environment, so that any expression of oneself is pretty well crushed.
Yes.
Right? So they grow up without any sense of really who they are, and they basically find people in their lives to pretty much tell them what to do.
And make their decisions for them.
Yes, yes.
Which could be
What do
really
you think I
frustrating.
should do?
Yeah, exactly. And they'll actually, in some cases, what I've seen is suffocate the relationship because of the fact there's only one person in the relationship. I'll be whoever it is you want me to be. Just tell me what that is.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
That's been a real problem. And I think Nick was able to put a picture of the book on the screen for those watching on YouTube or on Ustream, because this does stream out live as well. So thank you for that, Nick. So some people have just got to see what the book looks like.
That's right. That's right.
But still go to Amazon.
Yes, thank you.
There it is, right there. Look at that.
All right.
Hey, that's why he's the best operator in the business.
I see that. I see that.
So, so that's the week.
The weak man is one of them, yes. Let's move on to the provider.
Yes.
All right. So the provider, I know myself that I have a very strong provider complex, which means that I see my job, my role, my value as a man as going out and bringing home the money, the bringing home and supporting my family, going out and working and doing all of those things that is necessary to provide for the family and provide for the home. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Sure.
That actually is a good thing, but some people take it to an extreme.
Sure.
So they're either see themselves as all their job is to provide, and as long as they're doing that, I'm fine. Well, that's great. So they're either gone all the time working, they're working so hard, they're exhausted when they get home, or they just sort of give up when they get home and decide, okay, I did my job for the day. I'll just sit in front of the television, or I'll tinker in the garage, or I'll do something, but I will ultimately avoid the people that I love the most and that love me the most.
Emotionally unavailable.
Exactly, emotionally unavailable.
And what I've seen with that as well, and tell me if this has been your experience, on the extreme case of the provider, that there almost becomes a martyrdom where they'll go without things themselves while providing for their family because that makes them feel like a hero, because after all, I gave my all for you while I did without.
Yes, which overlaps into the next type, which is the fixer.
Right. How's that for a segue?
That's right. Well, that was good. It was like you actually set it up that way.
Well, I read the book.
Oh, okay. There you go. So the fixer, similar to the provider, but the fixer is the person, and as men, we sort of see ourselves as our job is to fix things. And
yes.
sometimes it's to fix people as well as fix mechanical things, right? Which I don't do very well.
You're gonna go there, aren't you?
Yeah, I know. Well,
Yes, you folks read about the battery on my car on Facebook. Leave it alone. I changed it. I did good. Some people didn't get I was kidding around about my not being able to do mechanical stuff. So.
I'm with you there. I'm with you. I was not born with a hammer in my hand. Let's put it that way.
That's right.
So, but the fixer sees his job as to fix.
Right.
Right? And so if there's a problem, I fix it. Well, the problem with fixing is that sometimes people don't want to be fixed. And this is especially true in male-female relationships where the male thinks that it's his job to fix whatever his partner's problem is. And many a time I've tried to do that, and I've been told, I don't need to be fixed. I don't want you to fix me. I just want you to listen to me. But often I feel compelled to fix.
Say that again. I just want you to listen to me.
I just want you to listen to me. Yeah. Men are fixers, women are venters in many ways. I've learned that the hard way over the years, and I still haven't quite got it, but I'm working on it. It's a work in progress.
No, but that's an important point. Particularly people who are in the recovery community will get into relationships, I found, and try to, excuse the expression, 12-step their spouse on everything. In other words, try to bring them some type of program to live by when they don't want that. They want you to be their partner, not their rescuer.
Exactly. exactly.
very much
And the other downside to the fixer is that people will take advantage of that fixing. So it's like they're never off call, and the fixer feels compelled to fix. So people may take advantage of that, and they're always being called out to fix, either literally fix something mechanical, or they're always on call because people are coming to them with their problems, and they feel like they have to take care of everyone.
I find that greatly among adult children of alcoholics.
Yes.
And that's where they get their source of feeling loved. And they usually become exhausted, as you said. They become bleeding and on fire, angry, resentful. But after all, I was just trying to be helpful.
Yes.
And nobody appreciates it.
Yes.
Well, speaking about being appreciated, we're coming up to our first break. And my guest tonight is Dr. John Smith, the author of The Authentic Man, a guide for happiness and purpose. And we'll be back with him in just 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Tekashi 6ix9ine fires his entire staff and cancels his U.S. tour. This is the entertainment wrap-up for the Inland Empire. I'm Andrew Caravella. Tekashi 6ix9ine, rapper extraordinaire, literally just fired his entire crew. They're gone. All of them. They're all fired. Oh, and he's canceling his U.S. tour. The rapper, according to TMZ, took to Instagram on Thursday and said he no longer has a manager, a booking agent, or a publicist. He was quoted in the video as saying, "I fired everybody." And what's more is Tekashi says his American tour is also done. He had shows lined up in New York, Florida, and Texas, but not anymore. Tekashi also fired off a warning to venues, saying beware of any agents booking him unless he says so himself. And just like the rock star that this rapper is, he ended his Instagram video by telling everyone that his album drops next week. Now in other news, we've learned that P. Diddy's ex has been found dead at 47, Kim Porter. Kim Porter, a model and actress who dated Diddy for 13 years and also has kids with him, was found dead Thursday at her LA area home, according to TMZ. According to the emergency dispatch audio, the call came in as a patient in cardiac arrest.
Engine 76, Rescue 82, cardiac arrest. Engine 76, you're going to get EMS 14. EMS 14, respond with Engine 76 on scene of the cardiac arrest.
Diddy and Kim's relationship spanned more than a decade with several breakups and makeups. They started dating in 1994 and broke up for the last time in 2007. They have 3 children together, twin girls who were born in 2006, as well as a son, Christian, who was born in 1998. P. Diddy's rep, Cindy Berger, told TMZ that sadly, I can confirm the passing of Kim Porter. I ask that you give the family's privacy at this time. And that's going to be the entertainment wrap-up for the Inland Empire. I'm Andrew Caravella.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reid. This portion of the show is brought to you by Draper & Kramer Mortgage Corporation, the name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you're looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Ernie Gonzalez at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-284-8332, or online at mortgagesbyernie.com. Tell them that Father John sent you. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, is the Equal Housing Lender. And if you miss those numbers, you can go to www.viewpointwithfatherjohn.com, and all that information will be there. Also, if you'd like to help support this program, because our listeners do help support this program, you can go on there and click support. And if you like the shirts, the cups, or anything, click on the contact button. I'll tell you how to get those, and I'll be glad to have you going around town with Viewpoint with Father John on your shirt. Now we have sweatshirts, and we have those beautiful mugs, just like this one right here. You can have one of your very own. So
I've got one.
That's right. Dr. Smith has one, and he sports it handsomely. And speaking of Dr. Smith, he is my guest tonight. He is the great Dr. John Smith, who is the author of the book, The Authentic Man, a guide to happiness and purpose. Those of you watching us on Ustream or on YouTube, you can see that photo right now of the book cover. I can personally recommend this book as someone who has read it. I absolutely agree with what he has written in there. I think it's a brilliant book. So we're talking about the different personalities. And before we went into the commercial, I just talked a little bit about how a lot of times a fixer is a result of someone who grew up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional home. And that was their way of dealing with things, that if I fix, I'm lovable.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Well, and I think all of the types that are listed in the book that we'll be talking about tonight, that's the common theme amongst each one of these different types, is that each of these types are ways of coping and adapting that we often learn in our childhood, ways of dealing with whatever life brings us, whether it's problems at home, whether it's just dealing with coping with life in general. But each one of those men lacks what I call emotional wholeness, which is basically just being connected to themselves. It's like they're following a role or a script that they didn't write. Correct. It was written for them, or it was developed as a way to deal with stuff that they had to deal with, but it became a pattern of relating, and maybe that's just the way they think they're supposed to be. The problem with that is that some people find happiness and fulfillment in those roles, so that's not a problem.
Right.
But there are a lot of people that follow those roles blindly, and they never find happiness and fulfillment because they're following a script that wasn't really written for who they really were. And that's so they don't really have a sense of who they really are, or what I call the true or authentic self.
Right. And that's a very important point. In fact, true spirituality is always pointing towards the true self. Mm-hmm. And that's sometimes the difference between healthy religion and unhealthy religion. Healthy religion is always pointing to something bigger than itself and leads you to your true self, where a healthy religion is just a tribal religion. Mm-hmm. And it could be very dangerous. Something that you were saying reminded me of a good friend of mine who was going to therapy, and he asked his therapist at one point if he was normal. And the therapist looked at him and said, normal is 98.6. He said, what I think you mean to ask is, are you healthy? And of course, wanting to please him, he said, well, am I healthy? He says, well, a healthy person can do three things. A healthy person can work, a healthy person can play, a healthy person can love. If you do those three things, you're a healthy person. My experience has been a lot of people who fall under these personalities can't do all three. Either they're great at working, they're great at playing, or they're great at loving. But they have trouble combining all three in a healthy balance.
I would agree with you 100% on that. I think that's true. What is it that we all want? We all want to feel accepted. We all want to feel loved. We all want to feel wanted and needed. And usually problems develop when either we don't get what we want, so
Sure.
then we seek those things outside of ourselves that we perceive to be missing within.
Sure.
And that can include drugs and alcohol, but it also can include relationships. It can include things like these different personality types. This is one way they get their fix.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. So what's our next personality?
All right, so we talked about the weak man, the fixer, the provider. The next one that comes to mind is the comedian.
That's not funny.
That's right. And there's nothing, again, wrong with a sense of humor, and there's nothing wrong with being funny. The comedian, though, life is a joke.
Sure.
So you probably have known, maybe you've even done this yourself, when you've been uncomfortable with something emotionally, when there's been something going on, you crack a joke.
Yes.
And if everybody laughs, it relieves the tension, it causes things to settle down. It's a good way to ease or resolve conflict.
Or it's also a great defensive act, which is a thing that I've been guilty of in the past, where I can have a sharp wit and get everyone laughing at somebody else.
Yes.
And it deflects. The problem with some of this that I see is when that's our first tool to deal with people, we never do get to the true self. I think of people like Robin Williams, who we all adore, but he couldn't laugh his way out of the suicidal depression he suffered.
Yes. Yes, in fact, I even mentioned that in the book that, I used him as an example because when I finished writing the book, it was very close to the time when he actually committed suicide. And I thought, well, okay, here's a guy, Robin Williams, as an example. I also talked about Philip Seymour Hoffman,
Yes.
who died of an overdose. I don't know if it was intentional or accidental, but nonetheless, he had been clean and sober for a long time and then relapsed because he was apparently depressed as well. And I'm thinking, here are these guys that have what we would all say is an ideal life. They have millions of fans that love them. They have money and things, and yet for some reason on the inside they were very miserable and unhappy. So what was missing? There was something that for them was missing that they didn't have. Money couldn't buy, fame couldn't fix. Something was missing.
Smiling on the outside while dying on the inside.
Yeah. Well, what's that song? Tears of a Clown When No One's Around? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's absolutely true. And there's more of that than people realize. And you and I have seen it as people who've done counseling work, where people will come to us and they try to be really pleasant, really caring. And it takes a while. I find it more difficult to crack the case in that place, to get them in touch with really the real issues, because that means I have to stop the comedy for a little bit and ask them, well, how do you really feel about that? Because because your laughter and your eyes are telling me two different stories.
Yes, yes. So the problem then with the comedian is that, again, they're using humor as a way to either cope with or alleviate any sort of turmoil or stress or conflict, or they, as you mentioned, I call it kind of a sideways humor, where they say what they really mean, but they say it in a sarcastic or demeaning way.
Sure.
And in either case, they're not really being true to who they really are.
Yes. And most people miss that because they hear the laughs, they don't hear the tears.
That's correct. That's correct. And of course, not everybody that's a comedian is sad. Some of them are really angry people.
Yeah.
And so they use that as their wit and their sarcasm to be sort of passive aggressive in their delivery of anger. Yeah.
There's a term that I would like for you to explain to the listeners, because not everyone understands that term, passive aggressive. And I think it's an important term to be familiar with, that we see, particularly in politics, we see it, that a lot of people aren't familiar with. Could you explain it a little bit to the listener?
Well, the way I would define it so that people can understand the difference, we've got two words, passive and aggressive, right?
Right.
But we put them together, so we know what aggressive is. That's and there actually is one of my types is sort of a hostile person, an angry person who's their main demeanor is that they're walking around angry and upset all the time, and they use their anger and hostility to basically keep everybody at a distance. It's a way to protect them from getting close. It's easy, as a man in particular, to express anger.
Yes.
Okay. In fact, sometimes that's the only emotion or feeling that they're allowed to or feel that they're allowed to express.
John Wayne, yeah.
Exactly. So they can express their anger, but often their anger masks other emotions. I call it the anger channel. So all of their emotions come out as anger because that's the only one that they're comfortable with or allowed to express. So we know what anger and hostility looks like, but what does passive anger look like? Well, those are the ones that just drive me crazy, to be honest, because they never seem to be able to be accountable. You say, why did you do that? And they'll say, do what? I didn't do anything. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything. What do you mean? So they're very hard to pin down and often you don't see them coming. So
Yes.
a passive-aggressive person is the person that smiles at you as they stab you in the back.
Yes.
Right.
And twist the knife while they're doing it.
That's right, and smile because basically they have a lot of rage and anger that they can't express directly like the angry, hostile person can, so they have to suppress it, and in other words, don't get mad, get even.
Sure.
That's the passive-aggressive person. Passive-aggressive people are also often victims. In terms of it's never their fault, and they always seem to be the one that everybody does. I didn't do anything; they did it to me.
Which also goes along with borderline personality disorder.
Well, they tend to fall. They tend to fall into that category very often. Yes. So the passive-aggressive person is difficult to deal with. I would much rather deal with the hostile aggressive person because you know where they're coming from.
Yes.
And usually with the hostile aggressive person, the angry person, they are a one-trick pony, so to speak. In other words, if you can get past that layer of anger and hostility, usually there's nothing behind it. It's like I describe it as my favorite cookie, real crusty and hard on the outside, real soft on the inside. If you can get through that layer, that crusty layer on the outside, the rest of the cookie's real soft and chewy.
That's going to be in my head all night. I won't be able to get rid of that one. What's the next personality
Okay,
type?
so you mentioned John Wayne.
Yes.
We can think of him sometimes as that angry guy, but one of the other personalities is stoic.
Yes.
So stoic is basically where one doesn't express any emotion at all. They remain calm and unfeeling, and of course John Wayne, the hero type, but he can get a little mad when he fights the bad guy.
Right.
But he doesn't really express a lot of anger. You don't ever really hear John Wayne yelling too much.
Right.
You don't see him. And then especially when it comes to romance and relationships, you rarely see him being able to express himself emotionally to the women that he loves in the movies, or you never see him taking care of kids and children, or he has
Right.
conflicted relationships. So he really doesn't know how to express himself emotionally. So his emotional IQ is about 0, even though we admire him because he can stay calm in a crisis and he can handle things, and he's not afraid, or he doesn't appear to be afraid.
Well, I used to call it the Mr. Spock syndrome.
Oh yeah.
Everything is logical. And at one point, I had someone accuse me of being like Mr. Spock. Everything was logical, and I always had a logical conclusion. They say, yeah, but how do you feel about that? And I say, what does feeling have to do with it? Here's the logic. And that really can be a difficult thing to work through when you're avoiding your emotions by trying to keep everything according to logic.
And let's think about why a person would avoid their emotions. One would be that they don't really they're not really allowed to express them, or in the past when they did express them, they were shut down, maybe even punished or ridiculed
Yes.
for doing that. So they just learn to keep that all shoved down. Sometimes they overexpress their emotions, so they're afraid of them.
Right.
Also, what I'm really afraid of is being rejected and abandoned. So if I've been rejected or perceive that I've been rejected in the past for being, I felt for someone and then they left me, well, I'm never going to do that again because it hurt too bad.
Well, I think Claudia Black talks about the three rules of the dysfunctional family is don't trust, don't talk, don't feel.
Yes.
And that's how you keep the sick family sick. Because anything you say can and will be used against you at a convenient time. Mm-hmm. If you trust people outside the family, you're a traitor. It's just, and if you feel you want to cry, I'll give you reason to cry.
Right.
So, yeah, that's really tough. Speaking about reason to cry, we're coming up to our next commercial break. And my guest tonight is the great Dr. John Smith, the author of the fabulous book, The Authentic Man, A Guide to Happiness and Purpose. And we'll be back in 2 and 2.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, K292 FQ Riverside, and K293 CF Moreno Valley.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Happy November 14th. I'm Andrew Caravello on another edition of The More You Know. Now, this is going to be a slightly longer one, but for good reason. It's National American Teddy Bear Day. Let me tell you a little bit about this. In November 1902, President Teddy Roosevelt, an avid hunter, went on a hunting excursion organized by the Mississippi governor. Now, Roosevelt was accompanied by some aides, other hunters, and reporters, as well as a hunting guide, Holt Collier, and his hunting dogs. Now, after a few days without success, Roosevelt and the hunting dogs were on the trail of a black bear. Having thought that they lost a bear, Roosevelt went back to camp, but Collier and his dogs kept searching. Now, Collier and his dogs found the 235-pound bear, and the dogs circled it and began biting and attacking. The bear killed one of the dogs, and Collier clubbed the bear over the head and tied it to a tree. He bulged for Roosevelt, who found the bear mauled from the dogs and refused to shoot it. He also forbade anyone else from shooting it. But as the bear was so injured, he had the bear put out of its misery by having it killed with a hunting knife. A few days later, a cartoon titled Drawing the Line in Mississippi, which showed Roosevelt refusing to shoot the bear, was drawn by Clifford Berryman and appeared in the Washington Post. Rose and Morris Mitchum, store owners in New York City, saw the cartoon and were inspired to create the teddy bear. They eventually founded the Ideal Toy Company, which produced the bears and even allegedly wrote to Roosevelt asking his permission to use the name for the bear. About the same time as the Mitchums debuted their bear, Richard Steiff of Germany created a stuffed teddy bear as well, which also became very popular. Since the creation of the teddy bear, it has become an American icon. A recent study found that over half of adults still have their favorite stuffed animal they grew up with. 40% sleep with it by their side, and 70% say they want to keep it for the rest of their lives. I'm Andrew Caravella, and this has been The More You Know.
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reid. And speaking of the World Wide Web, I want to say hi to the people all around the world who have been tuning in. I have been pleased to find out that we have listeners in Brazil, Panama, the Philippines. And so for those of you in the other lands who are tuning in via the internet and also YouTube, thank you. I really do appreciate the fact that you take the time in entirely different time zones to tune in and spend a little time. And I appreciate the messages you've sent me on instant message on our Facebook page. And as you know, I am good about getting back to you on those. So thank you. It's been great. This portion of the show is brought to you by Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, the name you've trusted for over 100 years. If you are looking to refinance or purchase a home, contact my friend Ernie Gonzalez at 888-284-8332. Again, that's 888-284-8332, or online at mortgagesbyernie.com. And tell Ernie that Father John sent you. Tell him I said hi. He's a really good guy. You'll really like him. Draper and Kramer Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2551, is licensed by the Department of Business Oversight under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act. Ernie Gonzalez, NMLS 1086147, is an equal housing lender, and he really is a good guy. He's a friend of mine, and I'm very grateful for their support of the show. And if you want to help support the show, go to www.viewpointwithfatherjohn, click on the support button, and you can put whatever you want. You could use a credit card. You can use PayPal. Whatever you give, we're always grateful for. And some of you have been really loyal about giving to the show, and that's why we're still on the air. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. It really is an honor to get to serve you in this way. My guest tonight is the wonderful Dr. John Smith, the author of the fantastic book, The Authentic Man, The Guide to Happiness and Purpose. And we still have some personalities to go through, and we're having a great time with you tonight, and I'm glad you're back. You know, I'm going to have you back again because you're a great guest.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoy it and appreciate the opportunity and really enjoy our dialogue. That's fun.
I do as well, and the listeners who are watching on YouTube, you can see we go to the same barber. And if you're watching, you'll know how funny that is. So, okay, where are we on our list?
All right, well, we're covering them pretty well, and it seems to be flowing pretty naturally. So the next one, we talked about the angry person, which is actually in the book. I call him the aggressor.
Yes.
But
yes.
I think angry people will understand that when I say aggressive.
They'll be mad you got that wrong.
That's right. I want to spend a moment, I'm not really going in the particular order that they appear in the book, and there really isn't a natural order. It's just the different types.
Right.
But I want to talk about one because it may be one that we really need to spend a little bit of time on, and I call that person the manipulator. All right. And if people listening have ever been in a relationship or know of a person who is always moving, life is like a chess game. They're always figuring out how to get an edge, how to get over on somebody. They're not really connected to anybody, but everybody's kind of like an object or a piece.
Yes.
Right? And so they're always manipulating to get something, or even to get what they need. They feel like they have to manipulate to get it instead of just ask for it directly.
Now, do you find that those people really drain your energy when you're around these?
Yes. In fact, in the extreme cases, we actually call those people narcissists.
Yes.
And a narcissist is what we, in my profession, sometimes call an emotional vampire. So they, instead of sucking blood out of you, they actually suck the life or the energy out of you. So if you've ever been around one or you've been in a relationship with one, you know that you wind up feeling drained. And if you stay in a relationship for a long time with a narcissist, basically at the end of that relationship, there's not much left of you.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes, even though you're the one who feels drained and used and abused, you feel guilty if you say anything about it.
Absolutely, and they're really good at the term is gaslighting, but they're really good at making you think that it's you that's the problem, and if you were just better, if you just do more, if you just do X, Y, and Z, then things would be okay.
Well, we have that problem with sociopaths too.
They're close cousins.
Yeah, because if I wouldn't have had to do this if you had not have. It's
the common theme between those two that you just mentioned, are the manipulator or the narcissist and the sociopath, is that both of them lack empathy.
Yes.
And empathy is the ability to sort of put yourself in the other person's shoes, to understand, to feel the other person's feelings, or to even feel how what you do impacts the other person. And without that empathy, then basically they don't really have any concern for you.
Or conscience.
That's right. They just it's about them. So the narcissist's favorite word is me.
The old book, I'm Not Much by Molly Think About.
Yes.
Yes.
I like to describe a narcissist. We think of the Wizard of Oz, the great and almighty wizard.
Right.
And that's how they project themselves to the world. But how they feel inside is that little man behind the curtain.
Yeah, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
That's right. That's right. So I'm warning people about that, because unfortunately, while people that are like that, not all of them qualify as full-blown narcissists.
Right.
But full-blown narcissists don't think they have a problem, therefore they don't really ever need to change.
Sure.
So it's unlikely. I mean, I in my book, I say if you're with one like that, run for the hills.
Certainly. And my experience with the manipulator, and let me know if this is on track with where you're going with, is it's such a defensive mechanism because they have such a fear that they're not going to get their needs met to begin with unless they manipulate the situation, and that they think will keep them safe.
I believe so. And then they also they require and need excessive admiration. It's like that's the air that keeps that balloon filled.
Sure. Treat me better than average, I feel average. Treat me like you treat everyone else, I feel rejected.
Right.
Certainly.
Right. So I thought that was one that was important, because a lot of people, I spent a lot of time in my therapy practice over the years dealing with people who are recovering from being with a narcissist.
Yes.
Interestingly, I don't see too many narcissists in practice because they usually don't think they need help.
Right. That's absolutely true. Yeah. And I'm going to say something that's probably going to get me some nasty letters here, but at least I know you're listening. I see a lot of that in the medical field.
Yeah.
A great deal. It's one of the areas that they're drawn to.
Yes, because they're all-powerful, all-knowing.
They're Oz.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Dr. Oz on the television.
Yeah. Well, no, we see them, in business. We see them in politics. We see them because they're drawn to that admiration, that power. That that's
sure. Yeah. Now you do know what the difference is between a doctor and God, right?
I'm afraid to answer this one. I don't know what.
God knows he's not a doctor.
Oh, okay.
Here comes the letter. Here comes the mailman now. Here's one for you.
There you go.
Speaking of that, what's the next one?
Well, let's go to something that's a little more pleasant, which is the pleaser.
Yes.
All right. So the pleaser is sort of a first cousin to the first one we talked about, the weak man, but their job is to please everyone and make everyone happy, or at least that's what they think. And if everyone is happy, then they feel okay on the inside. So their job is to make everybody okay. So sometimes we call extremes of that, we call that codependence.
Yes.
But they feel like it's their job to make everyone okay, so that if everyone is okay, then they get a sense of peace and happiness, if you call it happiness, but peace and comfort on the inside because everybody's okay on the outside.
But they can absolutely drive people crazy. We're trying to make everybody happy and to please them. And I've seen people get really angry with pleasers and say, look, just leave it alone. We're going to be okay. You don't have to please everybody.
Right. And they will do this and annoy the heck out of everybody while they're doing it. And then they're also the ones that will put themselves last in everything.
Yes.
So they know how to take care of everybody else, so to speak, but they don't know how to take care of themselves. So they're always at the bottom of the charts, bottom of the list.
And when I say that, I want to be real clear. They don't do this intentionally. They are well-meaning people. So they're not meaning to be irritating. They are sincere in trying to take care of people. But yeah, their whole life is consumed with fear, from my experience.
Yes. Well, and generally, again, they grew up in a family where they learned that if I make everybody okay, so it may have been somebody in the family that wasn't okay, and they felt like it was their job to have to do something to make them okay. By accident, they thought what they did made that person okay, so they develop a pattern of constantly having to please everyone that they're around thinking that they have to do that in order to get that love, acceptance, approval, and such.
There was one I wanted to add to your book, and forgive me, I know that's not proper to do that, but I thought would add to your collection. And it's a kind of a combination of a few of the personalities, and it's one I would call the Invisible Man.
Ooh, okay.
And they have found that if they become invisible, then they can't be blamed for it. And if they are invisible, they're not causing any problems at home. And that's usually big in the alcoholic home, where there'll be a kid who's the invisible one.
Oh, right. They call that the lost child, I think. Yes,
I think they do that.
Yeah.
And but I was thinking about that as I was reading your book. Now, I think you also had one that was called The Knight. And,
Yes.
And they used to jokingly call me the Knight in Rusty Armor, which is actually a book, by the way.
Okay.
A friend of mine sent me a copy of it who taught in addiction studies at one of the colleges. I had spoken at their class, and I had jokingly referred to myself as their Knight in Rusty Armor. And the class bought me a copy of the book, so we had to study this book. Thought you might like it.
There you go.
So talk about the Knight.
Yeah, so the Knight is, as we think of the knight in shining armor, or in your case, rusty armor, but knight nonetheless. So what does a knight need? A knight needs a damsel in distress, or someone in distress, right? So but their self-esteem, their well-being, everything is based upon them rescuing those in need, right? Excuse me. So the knight is built around saving those who are in distress. Now, here's the problem, all right? That takes a lot.
Yes.
Right? And so the knight is constantly in a state of rescuing and giving. The problem is what happens if the damsel is no longer in distress?
There's no purpose for the knight.
That's right. So he has to do what? He has to either go find another damsel, or he has to keep the one he's got in distress to give him a job, right?
Yes.
So that's one of the problems for the knight. So, and sometimes, believe it or not, there are professional damsels.
Yes, and I've seen people who play the part of the knight who have a tendency to get in relationships with people who are emotionally unavailable.
Yes, because then they have to keep trying harder and harder and harder to make that happen, right?
Yes. I think we have one left, and we only have a couple minutes left.
Okay.
So what's our last one?
Well, interestingly, the last one that we have on our list is the avoider.
Well, I'm trying to avoid that.
Yes, I know. We've avoided it all night. The avoider, similar to the invisible man that you mentioned, but the avoider avoids all sorts of emotional intimacy or contact. So you might find them in the garage.
Right.
You'll find them on the couch, but very disconnected. You'll find them on the computer.
Beat you to it.
Yeah, you'll find them on the computer. You'll find them in any situation in which they can be detached.
Yes.
Because the thing that I would say fear the most is any sort of emotional expression, any sort of emotional connection. So they're the ones that are there but not there.
I was just going to say, I had a friend who used to say, just because you see my body doesn't mean I'm really there. Check in to see if I'm present.
Yes.
Well, my guest tonight has been Dr. John Smith, the author of the book, The Authentic Man, a guide to happiness and purpose. Those of you watching on YouTube, you can see the picture of the book on your screen right now. He's been a terrific guest. His wonderful wife, Mrs. Smith, has just been charming. We had dinner together along with my wonderful wife, Gabby, who is looking at me like, you better not be the avoider. You better be the knight when we get home.
Right.
And again, congratulations to the best board operator in the world, to Nick and his wonderful wife, Lauren. And, we talked about the police earlier. And speaking of the police, we need to call them because his wife has stolen his heart. And
Oh, my gosh.
but I believe that he has the reward for the finding of it again. And so congratulations. I hope you two have a great time. Next week is Thanksgiving. I wish all of you a safe and healthy Thanksgiving filled with things to be grateful for. If no one has told you this week that they love you, let me be the first. Thank you for spending another hour with us. Dr. Smith, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Go get the book. It'll make you the man that you want to be and the man that everyone always has seen you to be.
And while you're getting that book, get my book as well. Close your eyes so you can see me. It is Christmas time, and so it's a good time to get these two books for those you love. And a great activity for couples is to sit together, read the books together, and talk about what you are discovering. In the meantime, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll be together again soon. Bye for now.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
Ryan, do you have any beer in the fridge?
Nah, I thought you got some.
The game starts in 5 minutes.
And you drank the last beer at midnight on Friday.
I wish there was a place that delivered beer.
Yes, I'm Captain Crafted. I'm here to bring you beer. That's Captain, C-R-A-F-T''D. Why? Because there's no E, just a D, as in deliver, because Captain Crafted delivers.
That's right, the Crafted Beer Store in Redlands is now open for business with great prices and deliveries of your favorite beer, wine, spirits, water, ice, and mixers. Did I mention their great prices? That's CRAFTDBEER store.com or Fred Crafted Beer Store on Facebook.com. Make it easy. Google Redlands Beer Delivery. Look for Crafted Beer.
Crafted Beer Store in Redlands is now open for business, and I'm here to deliver.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The death toll in the Camp Fire in Northern California is rising to 63. 7 more bodies were found today in what has become the deadliest fire in California history. Over 600 people are still missing, which is a significant increase from yesterday. The Camp Fire is now 40% contained. Florida election officials are ordering a hand recount for the tight race for U.S. Senate. After a machine recount, Republican Rick Scott is leading incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson by a narrow margin. The recount has to be completed by Sunday. Senator Lindsey Graham says the acting attorney general sees no reason to recuse himself from overseeing the Russia investigation. Matthew Whitaker took over the attorney general role after President Trump fired Jeff Sessions. Graham tells NBC News he does not believe Whitaker will do anything unsavory. A new Blockbuster report says Facebook security experts knew about Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential campaign well before the November election.
The New York Times report notes Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg was publicly calling it a crazy idea in the fall of 2016. The report says Facebook gathered evidence of Russian activity for more than a year before company executives shared the information with the public. The Times also outlines the formation of an extensive PR campaign to push back against criticism from lawmakers. Facebook is denying some of the claims in the story. Lisa Carter, NBC News Radio.
An Alabama district attorney is recovering after being shot by a former Alabama state trooper. State Bureau of Investigation Chief Clay Barnes says District Attorney Greg Griggers was shot outside his office this afternoon in Demopolis by a former state trooper identified as Stephen Smith Jr. Demopolis Police Chief Tommy Reese said he's surprised a crime like this happened in Demopolis.
Well, I mean, it can happen anywhere. Now, we are kind of shocked that it happened in the city of Demopolis. We don't know the motive behind this case right now.
You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
California Headline News. Friends and family of Ventura County Sheriff Sergeant Juan Hilos gathered today to say goodbye.
The Cisco Grove UFO encounter. And Ruben Uriarte, I really ought to give him a call. Also, Les Velez. Those two guys are some great, great guys. They really, really are. And so Ruben Uriarte wrote this book, very good book, about the Cisco Grove UFO encounter, and he is friends with Jeff Krause, and Jeff is coming on tonight to talk about it. Jeff was giving me a synopsis of the Cisco Grove UFO encounter because, as a rule, no, I don't read the book. That's how I was trained to do all of this. If I read the book, see, here's the thing. If I read the book, then I know what's in the book, right? So I don't read the book because you haven't read the book. And if I don't read the book, Art says, well, you'll ask better questions that way. So I never read the book. I will kind of skim over it. I'll look at pictures, and that way, if there's illustrations in the book, or I can look at the chapters, if something sort of jumps out at me, like here we go, right here. In Aliens in the Forest, the Cisco Grove UFO encounter, we've got Chapter 5, Humanoids. So there we go. That would be something that I would ask about, which we will ask about. Anytime, did somebody say humanoids? That gets my attention. So I hope you guys are ready for it tonight. Jeff Krause is going to join us after the bottom of the hour break at the usual time. You probably wonder, why do you say that every single night? Once in a while, we do something different. Once in a while, we'll have a guest that comes on at, say, 10 o'clock instead, on an extremely rare occasion. I don't allow it very often because, again, this is the rule book that I follow. But once in a great while, if there's an exception to the rule, maybe we'll have somebody on for a couple hours, and I'll let you know about that ahead of time. But for the most part, yes, our guests will join us after the bottom of the hour break and stay with us unless they get sick of me and hang up, which is always a possibility. You never know what's going to happen on this show. If you were here Monday night, well, you probably remember that anything can happen at any time. So the phones are all set. Everything here in the cockpit is 5x5, and we do have some